the sport's history, and his voice is the first thing they hear. Two simple phrases, decades apart, became more famous than most championships ever will. He spent his career standing in the shadow of golf's greatest legends, but in the end, it was his words people remembered most. His name was Verne Lundquist. This is why nobody can replace him. He was born in 1940 in a small city in Minnesota, the son of a Lutheran pastor. His father eventually rose to lead the church's regional organization, and with that came a childhood spent moving. The family settled, for good, in Austin, Texas. There, young Verne grew up like most kids of his era. He played basketball, he played baseball. Nothing suggested he was destined for anything extraordinary. After high school, he enrolled at a small university in Texas, graduating in 1962 with a degree in sociology. The expected path was clear. Like his father, he was meant to become a minister. He even enrolled in seminary. But somewhere along the way, something unexpected happened. In seminary, during classes focused on preaching, it was not his sermons that stood out. It was his voice. Deep, smooth, almost built for a microphone. Around the same time, he had already taken a side job as a radio disc jockey in Iowa just to make ends meet. Looking back decades later, he put it simply, he chose broadcasting over the pulpit. And as one writer later noted, had he enjoyed seminary just a little more, the career that followed might never have happened at all. His first jobs were small. He worked as a sports anchor at a local station in Austin, then moved to Dallas, where he spent 16 years as sports director for a television station there. In 1967, he took on a second role, radio voice of the Dallas Cowboys, a job he would keep for nearly 2 decades. But one of his strangest early assignments came in the early 1970s. For 4 years, he hosted a local program called Bowling for Dollars, a nightly show built around amateur bowlers competing for cash prizes. It was hardly glamorous, yet it gave him something valuable: airtime, repetition, and the chance to refine how he talked to an audience. During the same years, he used his access to the Cowboys to interview players and their head coach on the sidelines during practices and warm-ups, building relationships that would matter later. By the late 1970s, paired with a new broadcast partner, he was part of a Cowboys team that reached the Super Bowl. Locally, he was rewarded with 7 consecutive Sportscaster of the Year awards in Texas. The voice was ready. The national stage was next. In the mid-1970s, he made the leap to the network level, joining ABC Sports for 8 years. His voice reached a national audience for the first time. Then, in 1982, he joined CBS Sports, beginning the relationship that would define the rest of his career. The following year, he made his first appearance at the Masters, a tournament he would return to every spring for decades to come. From there, his workload became almost impossible to summarize. He called NFL games alongside well-known analysts. He covered NBA basketball. For more than 30 years, he was a lead voice of college basketball during March Madness. He even called figure skating at 3 different Winter Olympics. In the mid-90s, he briefly left CBS for a few years at TNT before returning to CBS in 1998, where he would remain for the rest of his career. Few broadcasters in television history covered such a wide range of sports while keeping the same calm, recognizable style across all of them. Years later, the chairman of CBS Sports summarized his place in the industry simply: the voice of college sports had passed from one generation to the next, and Verne carried it longer than almost anyone. By 1986, Jack Nicklaus was 46 years old and had not won a major championship in 2 years. Most assumed his best days were behind him. On the final day of the Masters that year, he started 4 strokes behind the lead. Then something changed. Beginning on the back 9, Nicklaus caught fire, picking up birdie after birdie in a stretch that felt impossible for a man his age. By the time he reached the 17th hole, the tournament was hanging in the balance. He rolled a long shot toward the hole. In the broadcast tower, Verne watched the ball travel across the green, and as it dropped in, his call became part of the moment itself, inseparable from the memory of it.
Maybe. Yes, sir!
Nicklaus went on to win his 6th Masters title, his 18th major overall, a record that still stands. He had shot 30 on the final 9 holes at age 46. Years later, Verne admitted the call was not as spontaneous as it sounded. "I boldly predicted, when it was that far from the hole, aggressive commentary," he said. "I reacted with what I said, a little yes sir with slightly more emphasis than that." But he also gave credit where it was due. 24 minutes earlier, on a different hole, a fellow broadcaster had used almost the exact same phrase when Nicklaus made an eagle, and almost nobody noticed. "I think the event comes first," Verne said. "The event, then the person." It was Nicklaus who made the shot. But it was Verne's 2 words that the world would remember. Nearly 2 decades later, Verne found himself in a familiar position, high above a green at the Masters, watching another legend chase history. It was 2005, and Tiger Woods was fighting for another green jacket. On a short hole near the end of the course, his shot from behind the green looked hopeless. The ball landed well off target, then began rolling slowly toward the cup. For a long moment, it seemed to hang on the edge, just long enough for the logo on the ball to be visible to millions of viewers at home. Then it fell in, and Verne's voice rose with it, capturing a moment that would be replayed for years to come.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow! In your life have you seen anything like that?
The shot gave Woods a 2-stroke lead, and he went on to win the tournament in a playoff. Once again, 2 simple sentences became part of golf history. And once again, Verne's approach was the same one he had always used. "The challenge is to be appropriate to the moment," he explained, "to not embellish the moment, to not overwhelm it." He never tried to compete with what was happening on the course. He simply described it honestly and let the moment carry itself. It is a small distinction, but it explains why his calls aged so well. Many broadcasters are remembered for how loud they were. Verne is remembered for saying almost nothing at exactly the right time. Golf was only part of the story. Over his career, Verne called more than 20 different sports, from track and field to swimming, boxing, gymnastics, and even horse racing. He was also a fixture of college basketball and football for decades, calling some of the most replayed moments in those sports as well. He even crossed into pop culture, appearing as himself in the 1996 comedy film Happy Gilmore. Years later, Tiger Woods sat down to talk about what made Verne different.
He has just an amazing ability to bring in the audience and describe a situation and just be able to narrate it in a way that is poetic.
A longtime CBS producer put it another way, comparing Verne to the great playmakers in basketball, a broadcaster whose real talent was making everyone else look better. To football fans across the Southeast, Verne became something more than a broadcaster. They called him Uncle Verne, a nickname that stuck because it fit. There was something familiar and warm about his voice, week after week, season after season. In 2016, when he stepped away from calling college football full-time, fans noticed. At stadium after stadium that final season, crowds turned toward the broadcast booth to acknowledge him before kickoff. He later admitted it nearly broke him. "I had to swallow hard," he said, "and pinch my inner thigh to keep from crying." His personal life was quieter, but no less remarkable. He met his wife, Nancy, at a bar in Dallas one evening in 1980, right after finishing the 10 o'clock news. They married 2 years later, in 1982. and stayed together for more than 40 years. The couple eventually settled in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, far from any television studio. There they shared an unexpected passion, classical music. Nancy became involved with a local chamber music festival, while Verne, the man once known for booming calls in packed stadiums, spent his evenings listening to symphonies. He once described himself, only half joking, as someone who could be self-deprecating to the point of sickness. Friends and colleagues, however, rarely described him that way at all. After saying goodbye to college football in 2016, golf remained the one constant on his schedule. He kept returning to the Masters year after year, long past the point most broadcasters would have retired. The decision to finally stop had been made quietly, 2 years in advance, after a private conversation with the chairman of CBS Sports. 2024 would be his 40th Masters and his last. By then, Verne was 83 years old. He had undergone more than one back surgery, and walking to his tower near the 16th hole had become noticeably harder. Still, he climbed up one more time. On the final day, Tiger Woods was having a difficult tournament, far from contention. But as he finished play on the 16th hole, the same hole where Verne had made his famous call nearly 20 years earlier, Woods paused. He walked over, shook Verne's hand, and spoke briefly with him. "We're going to be tied at the hip forever," Woods told him. Moments later, as Woods walked down the next fairway, he turned back toward the tower and gave a simple thumbs up. "I will treasure that forever," Verne said afterward. Reflecting on the place that had defined so much of his career, he said simply, "This place has been so special for my personal and my professional life." 40 years after his first walk up that hill, it was time to walk down for the last time. Add it all up, and the numbers are almost hard to believe. 40 years at the Masters, more than 3 decades calling college basketball, decades more across football, the Olympics, and a dozen other sports most broadcasters never touch once. And yet, ask people what they remember most, and it always comes back to the same 2 moments. 2 short phrases, nearly 20 years apart, both delivered from the same patch of grass at the same golf course. When reporters asked him again and again which one he liked more, Verne never really picked a side. "It's 1 and 1A," he would say, before adding, with a smile, that he leaned slightly toward Nicklaus, simply because Nicklaus was 6 months older than him, and he never let him forget it. Looking back on everything, he summed up his career with a kind of quiet gratitude rarely heard from someone with his resume. "I am just so unbelievably appreciative," he said, "of the way my career and my life has wound up." It is worth remembering that Verne never made a shot that mattered. He never won anything on that course. Nicklaus and Woods created the moments. Verne